Republicans, and especially our candidates who are all over this country, very strong standing with the American people back home. We need to live within our own means.
Can you please, I'm begging you, give me just one program you'd cut. We'll start with just one program you'd cut.
Well, there are lots of programs I would cut. I would begin by an across-the-board cut on all spending.
Can't you name some areas that you'd like to cut? Some programs?
Sure.
Excuse me, do you have any proposals?
We've got spending to cut in the short term, and what we've got is a huge problem in the long term where we've got to get serious about it. You're absolutely right.
But we could get serious about it now. In other words, there's nothing preventing you from saying, I would propose that we cut 10 years out expenditures on Social Security by blank. You could do that today. You could put out a press release.
I don't think that...
When you have, let's just look at this financial regulatory reform bill.
Be specific. What in the government, what programs, what agencies are you going to cut to get back to those levels?
Well, that's not rocket science. Let's start with all of the TARP funds. Let's get the TARP money back and use it to pay down our debt. Now let's bring all the unspent stimulus money back.
I mean, you're talking about unspent money, but there is money that has been spent.
I think when it comes to spending, we've been very specific about common sense steps that we can do to get government.
Give me one example.
How about the unspent stimulus money? Let's stop it. Let's stop it and bring it back. How about all the TARP funds? No more bailouts.
You're saying let's cut spending, but you weren't specific about where you would cut it. I mean, isn't that the real issue? Everybody likes to cut spending, but the issue is where, how? What specifically are you going to cut?
What are you going to cut? Discretionary spending. Anything that's not security, anything that's not entitlement.
Yeah. What is discretionary? Give us two or three items that are discretionary.
Yeah. You could go through every different program within government outside of entitlements, outside of national defense. That is discretionary spending that Congress has control over. That has gone over 88% in the last 2 years.
So what comes to mind for that, where you want to, if you could wave a magic wand and do it unilaterally, what would you cut?
You had the line item.
The line item would be across the board.
That's a pretty gauzy agenda so far. I mean, what painful choices are Republicans prepared to make? Are they going to campaign on repealing health care, for instance, repealing financial regulation? Would you just like to see those two things done?
Well, first of all, let's go right to it. We're going to balance the budget. We should live within our own means, and we should read the bills and work with the American people.
How do you do it? Tell me how you do it. Name a painful choice that Republicans are prepared to say we have to make.
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that as we look at all that we are spending in Washington, D.C., with not only the entitlement spending, but also the bigger government we cannot afford anymore. We have to empower the free enterprise system. See, this is where...
Congressman, these are not specifics.
Oh, they are.
Voters get tired of that.
That's good in theory, Senator. How would you practically...
How would you...
Well, tell me how to put it to work. Tell me very practically...
What are you... How do you get off saying something like that?
Senator, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing an answer here on specific what painful choices to really deal with the deficit. Is Social Security on the table? What will Republicans do?
Well, the president has a debt commission that reports December the 1st, and I think we'd all like to see what they come back with.
Wait a minute. Conservatives need a Democratic president's debt commission to figure out what it is they'd want to cut?
And if you did that, what would you want cut?
Well, I'd have to sit down and look at where we need to cut.
But everyone says they want the spending cap. They never say what they actually want to cut.
I want the spending cap, and then that forces you to make the cuts, because the reality is we can't keep going like we are now.
That statement alone is the most irresponsible statement I've heard from a reporter probably in a month.
It wasn't a statement, it was a question.
And there are a lot of irresponsible statements made by reporters, and that was the most irresponsible.
Senator, with respect, that's not what she said. She was asking you what you would like to cut specifically, and I think you answered the question.
That's exactly what she said. Go back and read your transcript.
We appreciate your time today.
You can't be duplicitous about this. You can't make a representation and then claim you didn't make it. You know, it just shouldn't work that way. You've got to have some integrity on your side of this camera, too.
Isn't the right time to have the adult conversation now, before the election, when you have this document? Why not make a single proposal to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid?
Chris, this is what happens here in Washington. And when you start down that path, you just invite all kinds of problems.